killer is dead.
Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Killer is Dead, very hard difficulty video walkthrough. This is episode 4, The Man Who Stole the Moon. And I really like these little interlude title sequences that the game has. I think it's a good effect, I think it looks cool, and it's one of the best parts of Killer is Dead, just the aesthetic that permeates the full game. And one of the things I really appreciate from Suda51 and the Grasshopper Studios themselves, because I don't believe it's all Suda, I think that's just one guy, is how some of the designs carry between the games. I think that's a really cool idea, like the rose icons and the jewels and the strawberries and stuff. There's a lot of silly features that they feature in a lot of their titles, and I like it that they've got that, you know, just that bit in common to give you that impression that it is a Suda and Grasshopper Studios game. So this level here is one of my favourites on the game until I got to the end of the game, and you'll understand why when you get there. They do a Capcom with it, and it's bullshit. It's just bad, lazy design. But it's also one of the longer missions on the game, so this is a solid 20 minutes with a boss fight that is quite challenging and is going to definitely test your ability to evade and to counter. But for the most, the level design here couldn't be more linear. You're going to walk around smashing vases, picking up things, killing enemies in rooms, picking up keys, and just doing the standard Killer is Dead experience. And you might be asking, what else does this game offer? You know, this is a full retail game. We've seen the hack and slashing, we've seen the action. Is it just your standard action brawler kind of game? And for the most, it is. There are some interesting moments on the side where you do, you know, stuff that's not necessarily this kind of game. But for the most, that's kept to submissions. That's kept to novelty sequences in the game. Like you saw in the very first mission where you were essentially, you know, dodging bullets by using trash cans to hide and all that good stuff. This enemy here, just to interrupt quickly, is a shield guy, as you can see. A couple of ways to really damage this enemy. You can use the drill to destroy their shields, or you can knock them in the air, which enables you to combo them. And what I like to do with this particular enemy is knock one in the air, turn the camera, face the other guy who's going to come and punch you, and then as soon as he tries to punch you, counter him, and then just chain your attacks from that. It's a really good technique. But back to what I was saying, the game does offer some interesting side stuff that is not so much a novelty, that's actually a full-blown game mechanic, but it's not quite what a lot of people are expecting. So, in between missions, you're given the option to do something called a gigolo mission, and you're not going to see any of that in this guide, mainly because there's no reason to do it outside of achievements and just, I don't know, perviness, lecherousness, I'm not too sure. The first time you do them, they are valid. You know, they might be tasteless to some folk, but they're valid because the women, if you please them and you give them good gifts and stuff, they will give you sub-weapons, and you need to get the sub-weapons to be able to use them, and they are, you know, one of the more diverse aspects of the combat, even though I personally never use any of them, which is something I'm hoping to fix, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm wanting to experiment on this game, just to see if it really is as broken in parts as I think it is, or if it can be redeemed through more knowledge and player skill. But just to finish up on the gigolo missions, for anybody that doesn't know what a gigolo is, in the context of this game, Mondo is seducing women and giving them presents, essentially. And the minigame is quite simple. You have to ogle the ladies' breasts and their groin area when they're not looking at you to build up a bar which allows you to have the courage to give a present to the girl. And once you satisfy the girl and you fill all her love hearts up, she will give you a surprise, which generally ends in, you know, getting an item, either a weapon if you don't have one, or a crystal that gives you experience. And then there's a novelty cutscene of essentially Mondo bedding the woman like James Bond. Depending on the rank you get, depends on how provocative the cutscene is. And pretty much all of them are unredeemable and bad. And the sequences themselves are just, I don't know, like, I've played a lot of Japanese games, I've been exposed to quite a lot of Japanese culture, and the way that they treat sex over there is probably a little bit more flexible and relaxed than a lot of countries, but at the same time, so is its interpretation of this chauvinist kind of male, you know, ogle the girls, girls are just a tool for enjoyment and pleasure, and it kind of doesn't roll that way anymore. And if you can look at it as a light-hearted side game, which is probably what it's intended, you might be fine with them. But if you can't see past that, it's just going to look like, you know, really poor taste, pervy bullshit. And it doesn't bother me so much. Like, I even played it with my girlfriend, and she thought it was funny. But it's not funny because it's good. It's funny because it's bad. And it's just so strange that it has such a strong emphasis in this game to do it. So, you know, if you're pretty young and you're finally finding your balls and you're all red blood cells, you probably have a whale of a time with it, you know. But there comes a point when sometimes in a game you want to have a good experience, and when I mean good experience, I don't mean, you know, sheer titillation for the sake of they made these polygon women, so let's make them scandalous. It's just strange, very strange choice. But there are side missions too, but the problem with the side missions for me personally is the kind of swings and roundabouts when it comes to what you're doing and the difficulty of them. For instance, there are missions where you have to find a bunch of things and there's a time limit, and you can do it without engaging any enemies pretty much, and it's a minute or two to do, very quick, very easy, and you think, wow, that's kind of cool, a nice little distraction, something different. And then there's another one where you're on a turret and you've got to do a bazillion waves of enemies of increasing difficulty, and it takes forever to do. It's not very fun after the first 3 waves because it just gets to the point where it's more stressful than anything, and you just kind of wonder, what's the point in this? It's overly long. It was fun for the first minute, but I've just done 6 minutes worth of it, and there's no consistency to them. You know, there's a bunch of novelty stuff, but half of it really isn't fun. And considering that they want you to play these missions a lot, I don't understand why they weren't just short snippets of nothing but fun and silliness, instead of this. Like, some of these side missions are harder than the levels, for no other reason than you're doing something stupid, you're timed, or they've put you in a room with a bunch of enemies that you never fought in such numbers. And because I'm playing on very hard, everything scales accordingly, and some of the enemies take a massive beating. So there's just this inconsistent feel to the game in a lot of respects. This is the execution mode that I speak about. It's a really fun and visually striking ability, but once again it has a very unpolished flaw, and that flaw is sometimes it doesn't work. And I really like this game, guys, I do. It has so many problems that it's frustrating from a gamer's perspective, because I know a lot of people aren't going to play this game because of its problems, because they can't see past it, because its modern contemporaries are so much better in every conceivable way. Like, the only thing that this game has to offer, if you can't look back, if you can't look past, sorry, its problems, which there are plenty, is its storyline, its stylish aesthetic, and perhaps its characters. And aside from its stylish aesthetic, it doesn't really have a single leg to stand on with the other stuff, because the storyline is incomprehensible, Japanese trash. Its characters, I mean, they kind of look cool for about 10 minutes, and then every single line that they say is the most redundant writing that verges just on the point of childish babble. Like, it's unbelievable that people get paid to make these scripts, and I'm hoping it's a translation problem and it's all just crazy, you know, metaphysical noir kind of stuff, but I know it's not. I know it's just trash. And then there's the voice acting, which, thank God, you can change the voices to Japanese, because the English people just butcher the game, and I don't know why, because it's not like these people aren't capable. It's got Wendy Lee in it, for Christ's sake. She's about as veteran as it gets, and not even she can salvage some of these performances. I should talk about those guys as well, the ones that remind me of Digimon. Whenever you come across a guy whose life bar is kind of covered in what looks like a crazy armoured hair clip, that means that you can't use the execution mode on them unless you break their armour. So, effectively, you have to beat them up until it gives you the icon which tells you to use execution mode. And a little hint too, if you do use the execution mode on them, it'll waste a rose and it won't kill them, so don't even bother. But going back to what I was talking about, which is Executioner mode. There are times when Mondo dashes towards an enemy, does a slash, and it doesn't even touch them. Doesn't damage them, they don't block it, it just doesn't affect them. It's almost like the game drops the input and nothing happens. And it's a shame considering it's one of the better mechanics in the game. But it's something that you need to be aware of, and it does happen a lot. So just be conscious of that, or cognizant. So this room here, I don't know if there's any of the crazy eye mine spawners. I don't think there are. I think it's just 2 of these dudes. They will fire those beams. Those beams last for a few seconds, and if you walk into them, they will do damage. It's not just a moment of impact thing. And when they shake like that, that means they're going to blow up, so get the hell away from them, or punch them towards something you don't like. And you see that, folks? Welcome to Killer is Dead. I just got attacked through geometry on an enemy that was through a wall. That's the kind of stuff you're dealing with a lot. And, you know, bringing the whole thing full circle, if you can see past the flaws, there is a lot of fun to be had. Like, one thing I really like about this game is when you kill an enemy and the stuff drops out of it, all the lovely treasures and trinkets, and they're all glistening, they make a really nice noise, they're fun to collect, they look good, and they make me want to kill enemies better so that I can get more treasure. And admittedly, a lot of the treasure is pointless, but still, it's great. A little tip just then as well, folks. Whenever you see Scarlet, if you have blood and you don't have full life, use the auto-healing feature of the blood to fill yourself up before you talk to her, because she will always fill your blood bar, and it's going to come in handy for this next sequence, because we've got a big fight coming up, and then immediately a boss fight after that. And it's a boss fight that gets recycled later on in the game, which always makes me very sad, because they didn't even change it at all. But there you go. So this fight here is a gauntlet. There's going to be a ton of guys. These guys have got the staffs. A couple of input things to be conscious of. If you evade too quickly, sometimes the input will register wrong, and instead of doing a dash to the left or evading in a certain way, Mondo will evade kind of wrong. For instance, there's been times when I've tried to dash backwards and he's dashed to the left. And I'm not too sure if that's because of my analog or just one of those input moments where the game processed it kind of wrong. So that could be a measure of, you know, error on my part or the game's part. But just be aware that sometimes when you try to evade in the heat of battle, it can sometimes not come out the way you anticipate, and just be ready for that. Something I should have mentioned as well. My Mondo is not fully upgraded. I do not have a majority of these sword skills, so if there is a particular move that you would like me to use or you think is really good and I'm not using, chances are I don't have it. So just be aware of that and take it as it is if you can, folks. These guys here with the kind of crescent moon staff axe things, I really like them. They're very fun to fight and they're very predictable too, so I can always generally use them to get a nice combo boost. And then it's just these eyeballs. He's going to blow up, so get away from him. And then just finish the enemies off and then kill the boss. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But every boss room in Killer is Dead seems to have pots in the corner of it, and they're generally quite square, and in the pots is usually life. It's not massive amounts of life, but it's enough to keep you going during a tough boss fight. Like, for instance, my blood should, if it was max, would be all the way up to the end of the top row of diamonds, as would my bottom row of diamonds, but I do not have max life or max blood on this playthrough, this guide. But this is David. This is a boss you're going to be quite familiar with by the end of the game. In his first form, what he does is he does a dash attack that you just saw then with the purple aura, which can be avoided, it's just quite difficult to time. And then afterwards, he'll normally fire 3 projectiles from his sword at you, like he's doing now. After the third one, it leaves him vulnerable. And then, aside from these moves that you've seen, when you get close, sometimes he'll try and attack you, which can be countered as well. I'm doing a very poor job here of countering his attacks, but just bear with me, we will get this done. There is his 3-hit combo. I just did a Just Guard on it then, which, to Just Guard, the game explains as, when the enemy's about to attack you, they will flash red. If you press guard when they flash red, you will do a Just Guard. And it will happen a lot just through the sheer nature of last-minute evasions. And there's a skill which enables you to counter immediately after doing a Just Guard. And I bought it for this boss. Doesn't matter on this boss, guys, you can't do that move anyway, so it's a complete waste of money at that point. But it's not a waste of an ability, because it's very, very good. So I recommend getting it as soon as you can, because it does launch enemies and it does stun groups of enemies. Wow, David is ripping on me right now, so at least you can see, you know, what not to do in certain instances when he's attacking you. Like, that right there, those projectiles can be dodged, but they're one of the trickiest moves to dodge that he does, and if you mess them up, it will paralyze you. And it's another one of the things that I really dislike about the game that is in quite a few games these days. When you get stunned by gunfire or certain projectiles, they freeze your character in a stunned state, and you have to wiggle your analog. And like, I damage analogs just by using them, so I'm not going to go out of my way to intentionally fuck up my pad just for the sake of surviving. I'd rather die and reload a checkpoint. And speaking of, pretty much every boss in this game, except for, I think, one, doesn't have any checkpoints at all in between encounters with them. So, when you're in a fight like this, if you die, you have to do the entire first phase again, which is going to be something that's either going to irritate you or it's going to force you to play it better. And for me, it kind of did a little bit of both. You'll notice I'm running away here and using my blood to build my life back. Something I would normally try and avoid doing if the checkpoints were better, but they're not. And to save frustration and to get this guy out as quick as I could, I decided to, you know, to just do what I could to win. But he's drawn a second sword, you'll see, and his attack pattern's slightly different. When he charges with purple, if he's not doing the ground projectile, he's going to do a teleport attack, which is a ground attack. And it's one of the trickiest moves on the games to dodge, because he doesn't shout and then does it, he does it before he shouts. So you've got to really know the timing to take advantage of it, or you're going to take a lot of sloppy hits. And with a look at this video, I'm taking a lot of sloppy hits, as you just saw. Like, there's the 3 laser attack, which is much quicker on the second phase. He's gone all purple Super Saiyan on us. And be aware, if you shoot this boss, he will teleport directly behind you and he can attack you. If you get good, or if you're lucky, which is probably a better way to put this, you can use that to your advantage to get a counter off the attack. But I found for perhaps every 3 times I did it right, I took a hit. And it just didn't seem to be reliable enough, because there are some recovery frames in this game, and the biggest set of recovery frames comes off holding square, which is why I never do that move, because it's just ridiculous. Oh, this is the paralyzed moment, and right there, if I'd not dodged it, I was dead. So this is about as close as this boss fight can be, and it just goes to show, you know, even if you've got 1 bit of life or full life, you are just as capable of killing everything on a game. Never give up, always, you know, believe that you can do it, and you will get past it. And the funniest part about this game is nobody's probably going to struggle with it at all, because there's a suit that gives you, I think, Ultimondo form or a Legendary Executioner form, and then there's also an additional costume that gives you unlimited blood, which essentially turns you into a god. And everybody's just going to save up and buy that stuff and then do all this later. And there are certain parts of the game where I really don't blame them. But thanks for watching, and you take care now.